prison industrial complex has got to be stopped. And this is one of the doorways of stopping it, is getting the community to get up front and saying, hey, let's end this nonsense and bring our brothers and sisters back into the community as productive, law-abiding citizens. And a classic example is these privatized prisons. If you was a superintendent of a privatized prison and you could come up with a plan to rehabilitate 90% of the inmates, you'd be fired. The shareholders would demand you'd be fired. How dare you get rid of the product?
You are not making me any.
And they have a vested interest in not rehabilitating prisoners. They have a vested interest in training you to go out and steal, but steal with partners so that we can have more clientele and we can make more money. This insanity has got to stop. And this is a very encouraging doorway to this, is by stopping the torture. And there's actual torture going on in prisons. If you're familiar with the thing that's happening in Chicago with the police chief Berg, I mean, there's over 20 people that were tortured into pleading guilty to crimes they didn't commit.
They didn't do.
And they've done 20 years. It's a horror show. And the jury found this guy guilty. And in August he's going to get sentenced, and they should smoke him. There's at least 20 people still in jail.
This is going on right now in this August. We're talking about, we're talking 2010 here in this August, and they had the trial, and he's been found guilty, and
absolutely.
Yes.
But this is torture. That this is what the police are doing. But let me say this quick. All law enforcement doesn't do this. These are the exception to the rule. But also, let me say this. Chicago isn't unique. This is happening across the United States. Certain police in certain cities are torturing people into confessing to things they didn't do. And that has to be stopped. We have a prison industrial complex. We have over 2.5 million citizens in prisons in this country. And it's insane. And the prison industrial complex, as we go down the list of items here, right, we'll get into torture devices that they make profit on.
It's absolutely.
It's absolutely outrageous. But the description of the problem, the United States Constitution bans cruel and unusual punishment. And there's a bunch of treaties and UN ratifications on torture. And when you read this stuff and you look at what's going on in these segregation units, this is torture. And this stuff has to stop.
It prohibits, the Constitution prohibits the intentional infliction of mental or physical pain on another person for the purpose of interrogation and punishment. Okay?
Yes.
I mean, it's clearly those type of things. And under international standards of human rights extended to solitary confinement is identified worldwide as a form of psychological torture with enduring effects and is unequivocally banned. Okay? Something that you yourself personally have experienced. No, I mean, if our folks out there, hopefully my regular folks know your background and stuff like that.
Well, I did 5 years and 1 month in Supermax.
In Supermax, right.
And what it does to the brain is very hard to explain to people. I mean, you don't want to do that to a human being. You take a dog in a cage, beat him with a stick, bring him into the community, open the cage, let the dog run out, and then run away.
Yeah, like my pit bull.
Yeah.
At 100 pounds shadow, right?
Yeah. And this is the
right.
thing, is you're taking human beings and you're exacerbating, particularly if they have mental illnesses, you're exacerbating the mental illness, and then you're taking them and dropping them into the community. They have laws that prohibit prisoners from getting jobs, getting housing. I mean, you have no family. You've been in jail for a considerable period of time. All your family died around you.
Yeah, they're all.
Now you come out to the street, you have no support.
You got no support.
And how do you survive? You survive by going by the best techniques that you know, and the last technique you know was hustling and committing crimes
Committing
to
crimes.
survive.
Right.
And the problem is, we know rehabilitation works. We know how to rehabilitate people. Departments of Corrections do not have a vested interest in rehabilitating prisoners. Corrections is not about corrections. Corrections is about job security, and that's the nature of the beast.
And right now, they want to keep it even more because of our
Absolutely.
economic situation, okay? And here we are paying, we pay for more for prisoners than for educational situation. I mean, it is absolutely a horror.
Massachusetts spends more
Right.
money in corrections than it does in higher education. That's a formula for social disaster.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely ridiculous. And the thing is, Massachusetts gets a little over $1 billion a year for corrections. 2% or less is spent on rehabilitation. 79% is on salaries. It's just insane.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
And that has to stop.
You know, at any given moment, 3 to 10% of all prisoners in the United States are kept in isolation units, and the majority of the nation's incarcerated men and women, increasingly including juveniles, spend some or part-time of their sentence in total isolation. That is a horror fact. And how can you put a kid, how can you know, babies,
Yeah.
okay, and what do you expect them to do? You and I both know what happened in Massachusetts of the brutality of Lyman School.
Oh,
Huh?
unbelievable.
I mean,
Absolutely.
look at what happened. In the gang wars of Massachusetts, most of those assassins that they became and killers came.
Okay, but you gotta give a little clarification. We got a commissioner of juveniles, Jerome Miller, and he shut down all of the juvenile institutions
Thank
in the
God.
state of Massachusetts.
Yes.
When he did that, people don't understand, he cut the link to people going to jail. When I went, I've been through the reform schools in Massachusetts. When I got to the state prison, 35 to 45% of the people there I knew from reform school. When he shut these juvenile joints down, that chain broke. Those children weren't coming into prison.
That's right.
They weren't being programmed to come into prison. And an interesting fact is, in '64, we had a gang war in Boston. 68 people were killed. The vast majority of these individuals
Yeah.
were products of the reform schools.
Absolutely.
These reform schools either broke you or turned you into a potential cold-blooded killer.
Absolutely.
And these are the guys that became the contract killers.
And what
Joe
I'm
Barboza, the Bear,
yeah,
Bulger, and that whole crew.
the one
They
the
all-
one they see in Departed, the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, all come out of there, right? But the horror is, Jerome Miller tried to end that stuff, and now these people are trying to pick
bring
it
it
up
back.
and bring it back.
Yeah.
And that's a horror. They know. I mean, they know from study after study after study, if you do
can't do that,
this,
yeah.
you are making a killer.
Reform schools are flypaper for children. Once you put them in them, they are stuck in
They're
them
stuck
for life,
for life.
and they're heading to the state prisons. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is a mistake. The problem is corrections in the prison industrial complex pushes the notion that you have to have these. Actually, you don't. There's enough evidence that says you really don't.
That's right.
And the book that we co-authored, when the prisoners ran Walpole, for 12 weeks, prisoners ran Walpole State Prison in Massachusetts, and prior to that, in an 18-month period, 20 people were murdered in that prison. It was one of the most violent, most dangerous prisons in the country.
At the time, it was known.
And when the guards went out on strike, the prisoners took control and ran the prison. Nobody got slapped, let alone killed,
know.
for 12 weeks. That says something.
Yeah,
You know
well,
what I
people
mean?
took responsibility.
Absolutely.
We got outside observers in there from the community that observed what happened, so that the guards weren't up.
Listen, there are violent, dangerous people in prison.
Absolutely.
But you know what? They're a small minority.
Exactly.
the vast majority of prisoners